warm welcome to each of you who's come here this evening for our talk, both members and friends of INTAC. And a warm welcome to Ashrafi, the art aficionado and very well known in art circles in Madras. Thanks to the Alliance Director, Patricia, and for the team at Alliance to make this evening happen and for graciously hosting us. I'd like to introduce our organization INTAC to you. INTAC, the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage, is a non-profit organization and was set up in 1984 with a vision to spearhead heritage awareness and conservation in India, with the understanding that the thread of continuity between the past and the present is very essential to understand our own culture and our roots. INTAC is today recognized as the largest heritage organization in India with over 200 chapters across the country. You're all aware of ASI. While the ASI looks after heritage monuments, those that are protected, like the Taj or Fatehpur Sikri, or in our own neighborhood, like Mamalapuram or Brideshwara Temple, there are thousands and thousands of unprotected heritage, and our focus at INTAC are these. The unprotected heritage consists not only of built heritage, but of all kinds of heritage. Built heritage, of course, we are very familiar with. Examples in our own city are like Senate House or the Victoria Public Hall, which has recently been restored. And then natural heritage is consisting of lakes, rivers, beaches, etc. And cultural heritage like crafts and what has more recently been acknowledged as intangible heritage, documenting tribals, their culture, oral traditions, song, music, dance, what have you, rangoli, kolam, etc. With the depth of knowledge and expertise acquired over the decades in integrating traditional materials and technology while working on heritage, INTAC provides first aid in times of crisis or disaster, and also undertakes preventive conservation or active restoration. At the Chennai chapter of INTAC, we have had over the past few years spread heritage awareness through talks, walks, workshops, making documentary films, cleaning temple tanks, restoring heritage structures, as well as bringing out a heritage map of Chennai and a guide to the architectural heritage of Madras, all of which represent some aspect of our rich and varied tapestry of our culture and heritage. Some of these books and publications are available outside. You're welcome to take a look. And those of you who'd like to become members, also the membership forms are available. Today we bring focus onto the magnificent temple complex of Khajuraho in Madhya Pradesh, built under the patronage of the Chandela rulers and recognized by UNESCO as World Heritage. It is instantly thought about as its erotic sculptures. That's what comes to mind for most people. While it is this and a whole lot more, the temple complex, symbolizing the cosmos itself, is an amazing delineation of the Nagara style of architecture. We are delighted that Dr. Ashrafi, who has in the past led tours to Khajuraho, will take us there virtually today. And I have the pleasure of introducing her formally to you. Many of you are her friends, as I see, but for the benefit of those who may not know, I'll introduce her. Dr. Ashrafi S. Bhagat was head and associate professor in the Department of Fine Arts, Stella Maris College, and is a well-known art historian, art critic, author and curator. Ashrafi has written extensively on modern and contemporary art in magazines and journals. Her research paper titled Lineage of Abstraction Within the Madras Art Movement is published in the book The New Art History, Studies in Indian Art. On seminal sculptors of Madras, she has authored a book titled Sculptural Configurations, Retrospective Progressive. Dr. Ashrafi has written monographs on eminent Madras artists A.P. Santanaraj, K.C.S. Panikar, S.G. Vasudev, P. Perumal, and others, and scripted over 250 exhibition catalogues. Continuing to impart knowledge to students, she is visiting faculty at Dakshin Chitra, teaching art history courses to museum management students, and has served as PhD examiner for the Department of Art History and Aesthetics at MS University Baroda and Department of Art and Aesthetics at JNU Delhi. She was invited to be an art historian in residence at Concordia College, Bronxville, New York State in 2011, and in 2012 invited to a visitors program to Germany, sponsored by the Max Muller Bhavan, Chennai, to visit Berlin Biennale and the Documenta at Kassel. She was also invited by the Department of South Asian Studies at Princeton University to deliver an online lecture titled Visual Aesthetics and Moments of Sringara Rasa in Indian Miniatures in 2021. Ashrafi has presented papers at seminars and curated several exhibitions across Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai and Bengaluru. At NGMA Bengaluru, she curated an exhibition titled Regional Modernity, the Madras Art Movement, 1960s to 90s, Painting and Sculpture, in the year 2017. In the online era post-COVID, she curated an online international show for INCO of more than 100 artists in 2021. Ashrafi curated an international show of select 25 Indian artists showcased at Busan Art Fair and at the University in Jeju Island in 2023 and Indo-Korean Biennale in 2024. She received the Women's Achievers Award for her contribution as an art historian and art critic, awarded by Brew magazine in 2016. We look forward to this wonderful journey through Khajuraho, a lyrical poetry in stone. Welcome, Ashrafi.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Sujata, for that very detailed introduction and kind words that you spoke about me. It's nice to have all of you here for this particular talk on Khajuraho, a subject which I have often spoken about and also have visited the site, I think almost 4 to 5 times, but still it's never enough. As she said, that Khajuraho always brings to mind the erotic sculptures. But essentially it is just 1/10 of the entire sculptures that are represented in Khajuraho. Now before I begin with Khajuraho as such, I'm for sure you must be having an idea of what basically a temple is. Do you have an idea? Should I go through it or should I skip that? Yes, Anna. Okay. Now, if you're looking at Indian art, the foremost monument is that of a temple, and it becomes the center for all artistic and aesthetic expression. A temple will embody or will have a symbol or an image of a deity that will provide a connection between man and God. Now, every temple basically is designed on a mandala, and that mandala is known as the Vastu Purusha mandala. A mandala in Indian art, we find that in the mandala the square is circumscribed, and the square is considered to be a very important, pure and a significant form, and it is also based on knowledge and human thought. Unlike a circle, which is very, very important in Christianity, and it has its various symbolism, but here in Indian art it is the square which is important, and this square is subdivided into many smaller squares or padas, and it is either based on 64 8 into 8 or 81 9 into 9. All Khajuraho temples are based on 64 padas. Now, when you look at this Vastu Purusha mandala, it is basically a model of the cosmos. Every temple is considered to be a microcosm of the macrocosmos, and everything that is contained in the universe is also contained in the temple, as you will find that there are representation of gods, goddesses, semi-divine beings, men, women, children, mythical beings, birds, animals, insects, reptiles, pests, palaces, huts, houses, all of these fruits, trees, forests, rivers, mountains, all of this find itself in the representation on the temple walls in some form or the other. That's why it is considered to be a microcosm of the macrocosmos. Now, the Vastu Purusha mandala, which defines basically the plan of the temple, is the model of the cosmos. It's a model of the cosmos, and while the temple has an analogy to the cosmos, it is also based on the Purusha or the cosmic man. The universal essence, as it is, you prescribed here, as you can see it here it is defined here within the mandala. Now, a mandala basically is not a plan, it's not a design, but it's a field of energy. So this is 64 mandalas, then there is 81. So a mandala basically is neither a plan nor a design, but it is a field of energy, and at its dead center is a nothing but which is everything. In other words, it's a shunya, or it's an absolute void, or it's a bindu, or it contains a potential full energy of the entire world. Now, it's in the center of this. In the center of this, in all the mandalas, is the representation of the Brahman or the superior principle. Now, this is again a symbolism, because in the temple, the most important part of the temple is the sanctum or the Garbhagriha. Garbhagriha is also referred to as the womb, and it's part of the earth. It's also, the analogy is with the cave mountain, and so it is here exactly in the center that the deity is placed. So this is the reference to that. Then here is the reference to the cosmic axis. It is said that from the center here to the top of the finial, which is the last element in the temple, it is in a complete straight line, and it represents the cosmic axis, or the axis mundi on which the world revolves. Now, this is a representation of a 15th century palm leaf manuscript from Orissa, where you see this is the Sutradhara, or an architect who's got a surveyor's rod with him, and he has made some mathematical calculations here. And here at the bottom, you see the plan of the temple, which is based on a yantra. So this is how, the planning is made. And always remember that patronage has played a very important role in temple construction. The patron believes that he will get, of course, many brownie points when he constructs the temples, but besides that, he also proclaims his power, his prestige, his strength, and everything about it to his subject. And the temples, the larger the temples are, the greater the power of the king, and that is what is basically propagated. So the king will go out of the way to create temples which are really large, which are really huge, magnificent, exquisite, with architectural splendor, and they will have the best architects and the best workmen, sculptors, etc. employed. And these royal patrons were just not dependent on the architect or the sculptors, but they were equally enlightened beings having a vision, and they knew exactly what they wanted. Though there were Vastu Shastras and there are Silpa Shastras are there, but what is important is that they were able to give freedom to the architects and to the sculptors to create the way they basically wanted. And this is what. Now the importance of this temple is that architecturally it's nothing great, but what is implicit here is a limestone linga, which is about 8 feet in height. And as the myth goes, that this limestone began to form around the Markand money, and this money was given by Shiva to Yudhishthir, and from Yudhishthir it passed on to the Markand sage itself, and that is how the temple is now dedicated to that sage, and it's an aspect of Shiva definitely. And it is known as the Matangeshwara temple. Now another aspect of the linga is that it is said that every year it grows by an inch. If it is growing by an inch, it also is sinking into the ground, and it is said that if it reaches the nether world, then the Kali Yuga will come to an end. So these are all the myths which is associated particularly with this temple. Then the next temple, see what you've seen so far are different kinds of temples, that evolved. Maybe that the kings, the patrons, they were trying out various forms of the temple, as we have it here in Mahabalipuram also, where we have the Pancharathas, and each of the Pancharathas actually explicits how the South Indian temple architecture has developed. So it becomes like a cradle of architecture, as we see it also at Pattadakkal, which is also referred to as cradle of Indian temple architecture. So here is a temple which was built by Yashovarman after he had defeated the Gurjara Pratihara, thrown off the yoke, and they have completely established themselves as the Chandela dynasty. Now they consider themselves as Chandra Vamshi because of the fact that they have descended from the moon. Now this is a temple which is dedicated to Varaha, the third important incarnation of Vishnu. If you are looking at it, it's basically a very simple temple. It stands on a very high platform or an adhisthana, and it has an open cella or an open hall, and it is surmounted by a roof which is made of slabs, and it reduces as it goes upward, very similar to what we see it in Orissa as the Pida Deul. This is how the Pida Deuls are found in the superstructures of the mandapas. Now inside this is the representation of Varaha, which I think is one of the most magnificent one can ever find in Indian art. This Varaha is 8 feet long, and it is about 5.7 feet in height, and the entire body of the Varaha is carved with figures of gods and goddesses, which clearly emphasizes the fact that Varaha is the embodiment of the creation of the entire universe. there are 12 rows, which you see here, which has all these representation of the various gods and goddesses. And on the snout is the representation of Saraswati playing the veena. And if we have to think of Indian sculptors as designers, I think we have some of the greatest designers when you see this kind of sculpture here. It's an animal, but the way, the format of the body has been used to create this kind of concentric layers. Can you see these? And it goes down to the legs. And there are also, Bhudevi is supposed to be standing here, but only her feet are there. And then we have the representation of the Naga king that is shown here at the bottom. So in this way, and it is made out of sandstone. When you look at it, it may look like granite, but it has been given such a high finish that it's impossible to make out that, it is sandstone which has been given this kind of a polish. So these are all the technical aspects, which the Indian artisans really excelled in, and how they were able to bring it alive, and how a simple varaha, which a boar, can be made into such an excellent design as we see it here. So here are some more. Can you see the form? It varies with the visuals, the pictures that you get. So here it looks grey, but it is actually a yellow sandstone. And on the snout itself, there are various narratives, which has been depicted on it. So the whole animal becomes embodiment of the various narratives, that the sculptor wanted to convey. And you can see how the roof has been, the superstructure has been formed. It is formed of lintels, the horizontal lintels, which are piled one on top of the other, diminishing in size as it goes up. And the whole side is open. It rests on about 16 pillars. So here you can see the details. Can you see the Saraswati in the snout here? And then there is a representation of Hanuman here. And how at strategic points, certain important deities also make their appearance. So a whole lot of, thinking goes into the making of these kind of sculptures. Today when we look at it, we say, oh, it's a Varaha and it has, magnificent number of gods and goddesses. But who thought of it? It's the thought and the concept, which is very, very important, and it remains exclusive to Indian art to have an animal, that is represented in this manner. Okay, now we come to the plan of the central Indian temples, that is at Khajuraho. And I thought I will use Khandarya Mahadeva, which marks the final culmination of all the Nagara style of temples here in central India, as an example, to explain as to what a plan is. One needs to understand the plan of the temple to know as to why these temples were important, why they were exclusive, why they were magnificent, why they were so monumental in character, and why they possessed that exquisite beauty, splendor, charm, and whatever you may call it. Now, when you're looking at this, this is the plan of the temple. In studying architecture, the first thing that has to be studied is the plan, and it's the plan which gives you the idea as what the whole building is all about. So the temple here is, you can see that it looks like a double cross. The four main constituent parts of a central Indian temple is that it has an entrance hall known as the Mukha Mandapa or an Ardha Mandapa. Then it has a Mandapa. Then it has a Mahamandapa, then it has a vestibule or an Antarala, and then one enters into the sanctum. Now, the central Indian temples also have two different kinds of plans. One is known as the Sandhara plan, which has a circumambulatory passage all around it, or it is a Nirandhara plan, which means that there is no circumambulatory passage around. So here you can see, so this is the Mukha Mandapa, this is the Mandapa, Mahamandapa, and this is the sanctum. It is based on two big squares here, which will again be divided. Now you see these projections here and they look like double transept or a double eyes, which are projected across it. And this was meant for a reason, and this was to provide openings in the side of the temples, because the temples are huge. This is Kandarya Mahadeva is almost 100 feet in height, and it has to be provided with light in the interior, so the sides had to be opened up, and so it provides that kind of a projection. And these are where given the Kakshasana seats, where it was possible to sit, but it is impossible for us to sit at, because you have to literally climb into it. You cannot just sit comfortably there, but they were meant to provide the lighting in the interior. So we have one here in the Mahamandapa, and then there is one here in the circumambulatory passage, and there is one which opens out here also. So if you are looking at the circumambulatory passage, it has 3 openings. Can you see 1, 2, and there's one here at the back. So there are 3 openings that you see here, which provides light in the interior. Now a Khajuraho temple, unlike an Orison temple, it stands on a high platform known as a Jagati, and on that the temple stand again with its own platform or an Adhisthana. So it gets that added height. Unlike an Orison temple, which is surrounded by an enclosing wall, none of these Khajuraho temples have a surrounding wall, but they are all open and they stand on these platforms. And that gives them that enhanced added effect to the whole temple. So this is the elevation of a Khajuraho temple. Now when you are looking at the elevation of the Khajuraho temple, can you see these are the projecting balconies, which on its inner side has this Kakshasanas or the seats. All of this comes from domestic architecture, and they are crowned by these wide projecting chhajja or an eave, and it has short pillars on which it stands. So here is the entrance, and then you can see the main wall of the temple, which is known as the Bada. Now even the temple division is based on the human organism, because it is the highest evolved creature in the universe. So if it is the Adhisthana, then it represents the feet. If it is the Bada, then it represents the legs. So if you come to the body, then it represents the torso. If you come to the top here, it represents the mastaka or the head, and it also has a neck or what is known as a begi. So the entire elevation, you have this division of the temple also according to the human body. So now can you see this? This is the wall of the temple. This is the wall of the temple, and can you see there are 3 bands? Can you see the 3 bands? Now those 3 bands are divided by a molding known as a bandhana. Bandhan, it binds and at the same time it separates. Now this is the highest development in the development of the wall, and it is known as the Saptangana, 7 sections. Now when you are looking at it, it is mind-blowing, and you wonder as to how it has been constructed, how it has been designed first and foremost, how it has been planned, and then how the multitude of sculpture that one sees on it. It's like a broad canvas, that has been provided to the sculptor to carve whatever he wanted to carve. Always remember that conformity was there only when it came to creating the iconic deity which had to be placed in the sanctum, because it cannot be wrong in any way, otherwise the temple will not be prosperous and it will have negative qualities. But when it came to the representation of other semi-divine beings, mythical creatures, or the representation of everyday environment, the sculptors were given a free hand to do exactly what they wanted. And that is what, basically you see it here. So when you are seeing it, you first and foremost, you wonder, where is the wall? When the wall is there, it has a core of brick. And on top of that are these sandstone panels which are carved and attached to the surface. Then when we move up from the wall and come to the body of the shikara, which is known also as a Gandhi, Gandi. And here we find a cluster of smaller shikaras, which are attached to the main body, and these are known as Uru Shringas. These are known as the Uru Shringas. And right on top, is the head, and it has double amlakas. Amlakas were used extensively in most of the temples, beginning with Orissa. It is found here also. And it is said that perhaps the amalaka trees were so common here, and even more important than that was the fact that amalaka is one of the most important ingredient in the Ayurveda medicine. And so perhaps that's why amalaka also finds its place here. Now, when we are looking at this shikara, with the cluster of Urushringas around it, it also gives the effect of a mountain with number of peaks. And this mountain again symbolically represents Mount Meru, or the symbolic resting place of Shiva, Mount Kailasa, Mount Meru. So these are the residing places of Shiva. So symbolically, that's what it represents also. Now, importantly, it is, Patha Mitter, who has written about it. He says that these Urushringas are self-images. Now, Stella Kramrisch, she has given the symbolic representation of the temple, and she says that all temples symbolically are manifestation of the main deity, from where the divine energy from the Garbhagriha emanates in various directions. So the ornamentations, that are the proliferation of the ornamentation that is found on the temple, in other words, become an outward expression of this emanation, as it can be seen in many of the shrines, small niches, which has the representations of divine or the semi-divine beings. Now, what Patha Mitter suggests is that Hindu designers developed a system. They developed a system which can be best explained by the concept of self-image or self-same. If we have to take an analogy from nature, if we cut a cauliflower exactly into two, each of the cauliflower, floret will look exactly like a big cauliflower, which in other words means that it is the self-same or the self-image. It will remain the same whether in whatever scale that it appears. This concept of studying geometric aspect of nature was achieved with great virtuosity by the architects who designed and who planned it. Every temple we know is a product of invention, experimentation, conscious choices, problem solving, as well as an accumulation of technical experiences. It was just not the architect, but also the sculptors who combined together. They worked together, and they worked together also with many other people, and they created structures which today are, one can't even think of it as being done by one man or a one sculptor, but it is the whole humanity which was put at work here, and how they have evolved these kind of temples. So that is how the Urushringas, the self-image, how it becomes important. I mean, this is one of the theory which has been suggested by Patha Mitter as far as the Urushringas are concerned. Now the balconies, if you see, in architecture there has to be some aesthetics, and this aesthetic comes from the contrast of the voids and the solids. So when you're looking at the balconies and the openings, those are the hollows, and the solids are the entire structure. So when you compare this contrast of the solids and the voids, that is where it provides a kind of a relief to the exterior. Otherwise it would look like a mass of architecture, mass of masonry, and it will not have that aesthetic expression which anybody would be looking for. So these balconies in that respect also provides that kind of a architectural aesthetic expression. Now when you're looking at this temple, can you see from the top to the bottom? It looks like a mountain range, with a series of peaks, and this is how it has been designed. So the whole temple, this is a Kandari Mahadeva, means the Lord of the Caves, dedicated to Shiva, and it gives that effect of a mountain range with so many peaks. So these become architectural metaphors, and how the Indian architect has designed and planned, and particularly in Khajuraho we find the best and the magnificent expressions of those. So can you see, this is the Jagati. It has its own platform. Then the temple stands on it, and this is the Adhisthana on which it stands. And you can see these balconies which open out and provides that contrast to the solidity of the structure which is above it. And you can see the whole clustering of the Urushringas which are there around the body of the main Shikhara, and you can see the double Amlaka, then there is a Kalsa, and then there is a finial. And if there is a, what do you call it? What's the symbol of Shiva? Trident. If the trident is there, then it is dedicated to Shiva, and if the flag is flying, it means the temple is with worship. Now we come to the temples. This is the earliest temple which was constructed. See, we saw Chausat Yogini, which had a very different plan made out of granite, and we saw Matangeshwara temple, which had nothing much architecturally except that it had the linga. Then we came to the Varaha temple, and it was just a small mandapa on a high Adhisthana. Now this is the Lakshmana temple, which was built by Yashovarman, and it was built between 930 and 950 AD. It is said that Khajuraho temples were built over 200 years, and that's why they were able to build about 85 temples as such. Now the Lakshmana temple is dedicated to Vishnu, and it is dedicated particularly to the Vaikuntham Vishnu. This is a plan which is again very different. Can you see it? It stands on a Jagati, which is a platform which is there, and on top of that is the temple in the center, but it also has 4 miniature shrines at the 4 corners, resulting in a plan which is known as the Panchayatana plan. This again is a temple which has all the 4 constituent parts, namely the Mukha Mandapa, the Mandapa, the Maha Mandapa, Antarala, and the Garbhagriha. We find that later that these temples eventually became important social and economic cultural centers, as it was in the south, and it is well known in the Brihatishvara temple. It is said that the cult of the Devadasis, which began in Orissa. In Orissa, originally, the plan was just to have the sanctum and the mandapa in front, but then later on, with the development of the Devadasi cult and also other development, a Bhoga Mandapa or a Mandapa for offering and the Natya Mandapa for the dancers was developed. In Orissa, all of the 4 mandapas were separate. But when we come to Khajuraho, we find a further development where all of these 4 constituent units are conjoined together into a homogeneous plan. So it appears also very homogeneous, and it appears also very stable as it stands on a common platform. Now the Lakshmana temple is said to have a lot of sculptures which is there on the exterior of gods, goddesses, and one important aspect which we see here is the Panch Agni, which is not seen anywhere at all. Then it has a sanctum. The sanctum doorway is richly carved with lions, incarnations of Vishnu, the representation of planets, Lakshmi, and the churning of the ocean. And it has an Ardhamandapa ceiling which is said to be finest, which one can find anywhere in India. Now these ceilings, I will show you how how it gets layered, and in that layering how the sculptor has defined his forms, which he has taken only from his environment. No sculptor here would chill and say that the ideas will come. No. What they saw around in the environment and what they observed and absorbed was eventually released, when it came to conceiving, conceptualizing, and implementing what they had to do in terms of sculpture, whether it's a sculpture in the round or whether it is the relief sculpture. So you get this is a very different plan. The main temple stands in the center, but it has these 4 miniature shrines which stand at the side. It may have served a purpose, but we don't know what it is, because there are no representation of any deities inside except here in the sanctum, which is the Vaikuntham that has been represented there. So this is the plan of the Vishwanath Lakshmana temple. You can see the 4 shrines, you can see the steps leading up to the platform, and it is a sandhara. We know it is a sandhara because it is a double transept. It looks like a double-armed cross. It looks like a double-armed cross. Even if you are looking at the plan, it has so much of aesthetic beauty in it. Not that, it is plain and simple and devoid of any aesthetics, but in its arrangement of forms, structure, parts, etc., it really reveals basically symbolically what the Hindu religion is all about. So here, this is the sanctum, and this is what I was telling you. Here you have all the representation which I just told you. Then, and this is the line drawing to say what all is represented here. So it has a very rich sanctum, doorway, entrance, and of course Ganga and Yamuna are always represented at the side, which symbolically represents the purification of the devotee as he enters for to be in communion with his God. Since Hindu religion is one-to-one, and it's not a religion which is based on community worship, that is why it becomes very, very important that the sanctum remains the holiest part of the entire temple. It remains dark, just like the womb of a mother earth. And this is where, when he comes in, he's able to open up and find that communion with his God. Now, in doing that, there are many rituals which also develop. First and foremost is the pradakshina. Pradakshina is where, one walks in circumambulation from the right side. It says that dakshina means right and pra means forward. So you move forward with your right shoulder towards the sanctum. You walk around it. You not only walk outside of it, but you come inside and you also walk around it, because these are the Sandhara type of temples. Now, in circumambulating, it is very important for the devotee, as he is circumambulating outside, that he, he's still filled with all the desires, all the material aspect of the world. And then when he comes inside and he circumambulates around the sanctuary, he still has to get rid of his material devotion to the earthly existence. But the moment he comes and stands in front of the God that he is communicating with, he has to be pure, he has to have a purity of mind, he has to have a humility, absolutely no ego, and stand in front of him in a state and in a manner which says that now he is ready for communion with his God. So this is the Ardha Mandapa ceiling. Now can you see how it has been carved? It is actually layered, you can see the layering, and the motifs are mainly the lotus flowers that has been used. Then you see a variety of geometric motifs also that are there, and all of this have been conceived and put together by the sculptor himself. There were many other sculptors who would be working, and here they were given a free hand, as I told you, and that is why you see this kind of a depth. It's almost three-dimensional. Can you see this? And how it has been developed, from 8 or 16 to 4 to a circle in the center. So these are the design aspects which the Indian sculptor was able to develop, which he was able to express and bring completely a new aesthetic in the interior. So if you're walking inside the temple in Khajuraho, you find that it's not just the the interior of the temple, which is which is spacious and which has a positive energy. But as you look around, on the balconies, on the ceiling, there are a variety of different kinds of sculptures that always will hold your attention, your curiosity, and that is, manifestly is what makes all of these temples so magical, when you visit them. I don't know how many of you have visited the Khajuraho temples. Just a few of you. But I think that you should make a point, make it as a pilgrimage, I would tell you, because it is an aesthetic and an artistic pilgrimage which you must undertake. And when you are there, see, architecture has to be experienced. You can look at n number of images in a book or wherever, but you will not get that feel, you will not get that experience. Only when you are there, you will get that. And it is an experience which you will cherish, and it will an experience that you will absorb and will remain with you forever. I visited it 4 or 5 times, and as I told you, it's still not enough for me. I would still love to go again. That's the kind of attraction these Khajuraho temples have. Particularly, I would say Khajuraho temples. I've seen the Orissan temples also. I've seen the temples in Rajasthan. I've seen temples in Gujarat. But none of them have this, magical quality of, attracting you to remain there and to observe and to feel it. Now this is the base of the Lakshmana temple. See how the base of the Lakshmana temple is developed. It has elephants, as though the elephants are carrying the entire weight. Then this is the pranala, or the channel from which the water flows out, particularly from the sanctum, or whatever has to get out from the sanctum flows out in this manner. So these also have been designed in a very artistic way, having the appearance either of the human face or any other animal that can be placed there. Then can you see in between all of this, there is not a single space in these temples that is not decorated with some kind of ornaments. And they say ornaments is such an important dimension of Indian civilization and culture. You look at the Sanskrit language. It has similes, it has metaphors, it has puns, it has alliteration, and it has so much more, which is what we call it as an alamkara. And this alamkara not only is decoration, but it says that it is not enough. That is what basically it means, that it is not enough. And definitely this was not enough for the Khajuraho artists. Now we come to the Vishwanatha temple, which is dedicated to Shiva, the Lord of the universe. This is also the Panchayatna type, because you can see that one of the shrines is there. Only 2 survive, the other have disappeared. It has the same constituent parts as we saw it in the... I better rush. Then here is the Mandapa, Nandi Mandapa, which is in front of it and where the Nandi is enshrined. So this is the Nandi Mandapa, which is very different from the Varaha Mandapa that we saw. It has projections on all the 4 sides. In every respect, this is a temple in terms of its size, in terms of its measure, in terms of its proportion. It is perfect in every way. Nobody can say that there is something which is askew here. Maybe in the other temples of Vishwanath and Lakshmana, some kind of proportions and adjustments maybe had to be made. But when it comes to Khandarya Mahadeva, we find that it marks the ultimate culmination of architectural style of Chandela dynasty. So there are 84 Urushringas that you see on the body of the Shikara, and that's the Saptaranga plan with 2 bandhanas. Can you see it? So here it is, Khandarya Mahadeva, opening with projecting balconies, Saptanga Bada, and 84 Urushringas. Now this is the Garbhagriha. Garbhagriha, as I've already told you, is the most important aspect of any temple, and it is here that the deity is enshrined and that the divine energy radiates from here. And can you see the Ganga and Yamuna, which is always there, and can you see the doorway, how richly it is carved. So this is the entrance to the Garbhagriha. Now on the exterior walls of the Khandarya Mahadeva, there are not only images, the images of Ganga and Yamuna, of course, for the purifying process. This is the marble linga which is there in Khandarya Mahadeva, and it is placed on a square yoni. Now this is also very, very symbolic. Linga is said to be the creative force of Shiva, or the male principle, and yoni is said to be the feminine principle, or the prakriti. And it is this duality in Indian philosophy which says that it is the union of the Purusha and the Prakriti that results in the creation of the universe. So, yeah, it is here. So, on the outer wall of the sanctum, there are three manifestations of Shiva. One is the subduing of Andhaka demon. The other one is Nataraja in his cosmic avatar. And then there is a Tripurantaka, the destroyer of the three demon cities. So it is represented on the outer wall of the sanctum in the niches. Not inside, but it is outside. So this is the exterior of the sanctum. This is the exterior of the sanctum, okay? And this is the sanctum. Can you see the Pradakshina Patha and the light filtering in? You know, this is another experience. The light that filters in is so subdued. Outside it is bright. But you know, when the light falls in here in this Pradakshina Patha, the circumambulatory passage, it is totally subdued. It is so mellowed. It almost is spiritual. That all you want to do is to simply walk around the sanctum. You know, it gives you that kind of a feeling that, you know, you can't be standing in one place, but you need to walk around, and that you need to pray at the same time. You know, that was the power that, you know, you feel in the light. It is just a light, but that's the power the light has. Can you see it here also in the other image? Where you see, and can you see the detailing of the sanctum also? It is almost a miniature shrine of what you see it outside. The self-image. So this is how you see it. Now can you see the decoration on the exterior? Those decorations, you know, come from the Buddhists. The Buddhists had settlement here because there are some mounds which the archaeologists say must have belonged to the Buddhist monasteries, but they are no longer there. The Jain community continued to survive, but the Buddhists were wiped out. Now the Buddhist Chaitya arch, you know, if you've been to Ajanta, you've seen that, you know, it has the huge Chaitya arch as you enter, and that motif has been reduced to a decorative one and applied to the surface here. It's amazing as to how, you know, various influences they fluidly synthesize and come together with the artist. Maybe some of the artisans would have worked for the Buddhist patrons, and now they are made to work for the Hindu patrons, so they bring in their culture and their artistic experiences here. So the Urushringas, this is the Adhisthana of the Khandarya Mahadeva, the plan with all the Saptamatrikas, and these are the Makara Tornas. As you enter the temple, in the Mukha Mandapa or the Mardha Mandapa is the Makara Torna, which means that from the mouth of the Makara, you see these loops of flowers that come out. Now this Makara is not just the Makara, but it is a hybrid creature. It has the mouth of a Makara, it has the, the elephant's trunk, it has the ears of the lion, and it has the tail of a fish. So all these creatures, you know, actually put together provides that very powerful magical moment in protecting the temple. That is why hybrid creatures always convey so much of potential power as it is represented. 34 number is said to be a spiritual magical number, and this is carved outside the doorway to the temple itself. So here you see it has the three bandhanas. Can you see? The division of walls into three sections, Saptangana. This is Pasavnatha, black marble, highly polished. And can you see the interior? Absolutely no light as compared to Kandarya Mahadeva, where there was that mellow light flowing. This is the Adinatha temple, much destroyed and much reconstructed also. Can you see this design here? This is the Chaitya arch motif. And this is the temple on the eastern side. It's said to be a Brahma temple, a misnomer, but it's actually dedicated to Vishnu. I still have sculpture to do, and I think I've run out of time. Can I continue? Wow. Okay. Now, the pivotal deity in Khajuraho, in the Shaiva sect, was the representation of an aspect of Shiva known as Sadashiva. Sadashiva, the manifest, unmanifest. And here at Khajuraho, it's a very unique kind of a sculpture, and it appears only in two places. One is in the Mahamandapa in a niche inside the Kandarya Mahadeva temple, and a much larger one which is there in the museum. Now, the uniqueness of this sculpture is that it has 6 heads carrying a linga on top. It has 12 hands and it has 4 legs. 2 legs are in Padmasana and 2 legs are hanging down. Now, the Shaiva Siddhanta system, as it develops, it says that it has been divided into 4 parts, or the 4 padas. So that is how, sitting in the 4 legs represent the 4 parts, or the 4 padas. So the Shaiva Siddhanta system, if you are looking at the pun of the word, the 4, is here that, it divides into 4 parts. That is the Jnana, Charya, Kriya and Yoga. These are the 4 important sections of knowledge in Indian philosophy, and that is how it has been represented here in the Sadashiva. Sadashiva sits in the Padmasana, so the Padmasana pose with the legs folded would represent Yoga and Jnana, and the 2 hanging legs would represent Charya and Kriya. Charya is the daily activities, and Kriya are the methods of the rituals, and you can see it here. It is very, very unique to Khajuraho, and it has been developed here. Then we find a representation of the various gods and goddesses. Remember, I told you there are gods, goddesses, semi-divine beings, mythical creatures, men, women, children, and the whole world is represented on the temple wall. So these are the Dikpalas, Agni, there is Yama, and this is Indra. Then this is, of course, Kubera, Isana. Then these are all the various gods. Even the gods, when they are represented on the walls of Khajuraho, they are shown in a very romantic way. Now, there is a representation of what is known as the Mithunas and Maithunas. Mithunas are the romantic couples, Maithunas are those in sexual union, and that is how we differentiate between Mithunas and Maithunas. So these are the representation: Brahma and Brahmi, Vishnu and Lakshmi, Shiva and Parvati, Rama and Sita, and Shiva. And then we have a whole lot of Sura Sundaris, Apsaras, Alas Kanyas, and these females populate the entire wall of all the Khajuraho temples. Remember, I told you that Khajura means a scorpion, and here is a representation of a scorpion, which is climbing up the leg of the woman, and she is allowing the scorpion to climb up, which is a negative energy, which means it shows the karma, the desire, the sexuality that is present in her. Otherwise, they would show that there are representations where she's shown, shaking off the scorpion that is climbing up, and hence, becoming nude. So, in many ways, the representation of these feminine forms, the representation of the women on the walls, indicate very subtly the concept of fertility, and this exposure of nudity is also a magical aspect of calling for rain. Now, feminine beauty has always been a very important aspect of all the writers, poets, sculptors, etc. And its sensual charm and glamour has always been part of an Indian psyche. Now, when we are looking at these representation, we find that the feminine beauty always alludes to something in nature. And it is from nature that, various aspects has been taken and given form to a woman. And nature's forms therefore qualify to define a feminine beauty. And the woman's body is not actually just the nature as you see it, but it is the different aspects of nature that has been put together. For example, Kalidasa said, when I see a wine, it reminds me of your body. Your glance reminds me of a very frightened gaze of a gazelle, young gazelle. Your face, white, shining, reminds me of the moon. And your tresses are like the plumes of the peacock, and your eyebrows, the curves of which are like streams having the small waves. But alas, I do not find all of this together in one place, and so it all is there in different places, but never together in one aspect of it. So this is how nature alludes to the feminine beauty in Indian art and philosophy, and nature remains the most important dimension from which all of these metaphors are derived to represent the woman. Now, in Khajuraho, when it comes to the representation of feminine beauty, it says that if there are no women represented on the temple, that means the temple is not auspicious, it will not prosper. It's like a home without a wife. And so a frolicking woman is very, very important to be there on the temple walls. And so this has also been developed. Shilpa Ratna, an Orison text, gives about 16 different Alas Kanyas. Then there are Sura Sundaris, then there are Apsaras. And all of these have been classified as Devanganas, or the semi-celestial creatures who inhabit the world. Now, since the Shiva is very much an important dimension of the religion at Khajuraho, it is said that all of these young, charming, nubile female, they are coming out actually during the Shivratri, when the marriage of Shiva and Parvati happens, that they are coming out to get a glimpse of Shiva, as he is passing in the procession, because Shiva also attracts many of these, and they want to have a last glimpse. That's one of the theory put forth by one scholar, Shobita Punja, but it has been completely dismissed by Devangana Desai. So here you will see that kind of a representation of the feminine form, the Sura Sundaris or the Apsaras or the Alas Kanyas, and you also see this representation of the Khajura, right? And that is the scorpion, which is very much there. Now, if you are looking at the proportion of the bodies here, the Khajuraho sculptors seems to have made the body more, they did not want a very light, elegant body, but they wanted a fleshy one and a very, buxom. They wanted a buxom representation of a woman. That is why you see with huge rounded breasts, narrow waist, and again the broad hips. So that becomes a kind of an ideal of feminine beauty here in Khajuraho, and the torso is elongated so that the breasts are thrown forward in a much more sensuous manner for the various amorous couples. And the sculptors have taken absolute delight in representing these Sura Sundaris in various postures. Can you see? The deity is there, and then you have all of these. Darpana Sundari, because she is looking into the mirror. So here these are all the variety of other, can you see, in various activities. This is in the Vishwanath temple, beautifully done. Can you see the back? Very elegant. One of them is removing a thorn. One of them also writes a letter, putting the paper on her sole of the feet. Now this is a Shardula or a Vyala, along with the representation of a woman. And Shardula is actually a lion's head on a horse's body, and it is passive contemplation. The woman which is placed next to him, to the animal, hybrid animal, is to arouse active contemplation. So it's something which is very positive. Can you see one of them removing both of them removing thorn from their feet, and how flexible their bodies are, and then as they move, the ornaments move along with it. It is so beautifully shown here. The necklace as it moves, and her heavy girdle which she wears. Can you see this one scratching her back, and look at her posture? She seems to be much taller. When you go to Khajuraho, the guide will say these are all Miss Indias that you find here. Then you also have the representation of everyday life. So here is a sage, an ascetic who is giving lessons. You will never find a dull moment in the sculpture. It is said that there is so much, the Khajuraho sculptures exhibit so much of dynamism in movement. Dynamic in its static way, and immovability in its movement becomes a unique feature of Khajuraho. So in its staticness, in its immovability, you see so much which is happening here. And here these are the musicians. The musicians are totally absorbed in the music, as you can see it here, and they're not even aware that there is a crowd which is around them and watching. Now these are all the various, the sanctum doorways and how elaborately they can be carved. And these are all the remains of many of the temples which have been found, and they are dumped there in one place by the Archaeological Survey of India. And I mean, you can, from this you will know that how much is lost and how much is preserved. So thank you very much. I had to rush through the whole thing. If there are any questions.
Any questions?
No questions?
Because we see that mostly there is one layer of Adhisthana on which the temples are, but here the
The
temples
very
are.
fact that it is raised on a platform is to give an added height to the whole. And since they are open, to the environment, when you're looking at it from far, it may give the illusion that the temples are shorter. But if it is raised on this Jagati or the additional platform, it gives the effect of the height that they desired to achieve. That's why it is raised. And they are smaller temples. See, the moment you enclose this temple and not put it on a platform, it will appear to be very, very normal. But then you can't see it from a distance. This is when you enter this western area, all the temples are open to the entire environment. And that is where the beauty of Khajuraho is actually.
What is the purpose of all these erotic sculptures that we saw there? I mean, there's so many theories, but nobody really knows why.
That's a talk by itself. It has a lot of meaning. And how they
Because
are
you
placed.
mentioned the spun and its double meaning, so I was wondering whether that also had a double meaning.
Yes, there is, because the what is it called? Shiva's Siddhanta sect is basically a tantric sect, and they wanted to preserve their knowledge, and they did not want to give it out to the general public who may not understand. Not that these temples were actually open to the real public asset, but to a considerably limited people who came in. So they devised these erotic sculptures in such a way that if you have to look beyond those sculptures, you will find a yantra. Some of them were designed in that way. Or otherwise they said that those who cannot find the experience of what is a union, then they can experience it here. I mean, these are just a few things I'm telling you, but there is a deep philosophical meaning as to why they appear on the walls. It says that Kama is equally important like, Kama, Artha and Moksha, and one more. It says one has to go through karma in life. It is an essential aspect of human existence, and it is something one should not avoid. That's why there are many critics who are very skeptical about the ascetics, who give up their life and live in the mountains, etc. So that is what the Hindu religion is all about. You have to go through every aspect of your life in every way possible with its own ethics.
Cultures on, is it a derogatory
No,
form?
it's not derogatory. Don't ever use the word derogatory. But the women were given the women were given a certain status, and that status was of prosperity, auspiciousness, and that she had to be a very important aspect of the daily life of existence. But she had no say in any decision making. Maybe the queens had it at that level, but otherwise, no. That is, you find here Devadasi cult developing even more vigorously. It is said that, some of the best beauties from Malwa, from Bhagat, and many other places in central India were brought here to Khajuraho. And, the Devadasi cult was very, very popular as a dancer. In the name of a dancer, she was married to the deity, but she was also taken by the king as well as the priests. The woman never, you cannot say that it is a derogatory representation. No, she's been given the highest position with her feminine beauty and charm. And the very fact that she's considered to be, a symbol of auspiciousness, prosperity, and to say that a temple without a woman is like a home without a wife, that itself says enough about the position or the status of the woman.
Mine's just a comment. I think you've delved so deep into the structure and the philosophy of it, and not just the structural part of it, and that's really amazing, and thank you for it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure doing it also.
One sec, please.
Yeah, I think I'm audible.
On behalf of INTAC, I'm deeply grateful to Dr. Ashrafi for enlightening us on the beauty of Khajuraho. I'm sure it's all in our bucket list. We want to visit the place, but after listening to her, we are going to have a totally different perspective, and we would want to look at it, from so many different angles and the insights which she has given us. Thank you very much for that, and I thank Alliance for this beautiful space, and thank each one of you for participating in this talk. Please do continue supporting INTAC and help us to carry forward the heritage and rich cultural heritage of India. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashrafi, and a small token for us.